Coming up on Hands on Apple, let's take a look at our sounds and haptics settings on our iOS and iPadOS devices. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Hello and welcome to Hands on Apple. I am Mikah Sargent, and I have really been trying lately to listen in to what people, with their permission, what people are saying, what people are complaining about, what issues they're having, what confusion they have about specific parts of their iPhones, their iPads, their Macs, etc. And so for the next, few episodes, I really want to try to cover typical frustrations that people are having regarding their devices. So one issue that I have seen experienced, and it's actually an issue that I have had myself as well, was something that I solved recently. And it has to do with the loudness of the sound coming out of my Bluetooth connected devices. And depending on what your settings are, how they work, what you have going on for you, you may find that you get a better experience once you make changes to the settings that we're going to be talking about today. So let's head over to iOS, and much of this would be the same on iPadOS as well, as we take a look at sounds and haptics. So here we are on iOS, and the first thing we're going to do is tap on the Settings app. From here, we need to scroll down until we find Sounds and Haptics. Now, we're going to go through these different settings together so that you can understand truly what you are able to change within this area of the phone. So a lot of people think, this is the place where I just change my ringtone. There's so much more that happens here. First and foremost, particularly on newer devices that no longer have that little switch on the side, this is one of the places you can go to turn on silent mode. I happen to have silent mode turned on at all times. It is just a way to keep the phone from making noise throughout the day. I just get vibrations on my phone and on my watch, unless there's special notifications that need to make sound. So silent mode just makes it so that it does not play ringtones and alerts and system sounds throughout the day. And of course, you can use the button on the side that used to be the sleep wake button to be able to, now it's called the action button, to be able to change that area to turn on and off silent mode. I have mine, again, on at all times. It does not affect alarms. A lot of people think it does, and therefore they don't make use of this feature. It does not affect alarms. Alarms will still play. So that's something to be aware of. The next option here shows Show in Status Bar. Mine is currently toggled off. If you have this turned on, what it does is it shows that you have silent mode enabled or disabled in your status bar, which is the area in the top right corner of your phone. So turning this on will then put the little icon that lets you know that silent mode is turned on. Because I always have mine on and I don't really toggle it between, I don't need to have it in status bar. I don't need to have it in the status bar because I don't make use of it. Now, a new option here in the sounds and haptics settings has come by way of the iPhone and iPad's ability to do more local recording on device. So now you are able to change the input on your phone. What does that mean? It means that by default, if I were to go into voice memos or another app that does audio recording or an app that does audio calling like FaceTime or Zoom or one of those apps, it would be by default, it would be the iPhone microphone that is listening to my voice. If I were to have my AirPods in right now, it would switch to my AirPods as the default input. But we can tap on this and we can actually change it between automatic, which will kind of switch between them, and in this case, iPhone microphone, because those are the only options we have available. If I had another device connected to this phone that was able to serve as a microphone, that option would show up as well. This is particularly handy if you have, say, headphones that you want to use to hear what's going on in a conversation, but you want to use the built-in microphone or some other input option as a way of having your phone hear your voice or other sound around you. So having this input section, we're super happy about it. Celebrate good times, come on. The next section is all about ringtones and alerts, and this is important as well because this is a setting that, depending on how you have it set up, is going to make a lot of a difference. So by default, I can change the level of volume of ringtone and alerts that would play if I didn't have silent mode enabled. So this is going to make my text tones louder, incoming calls would be louder, any sort of chime or notification or any of those would be louder based on how I move the slider in this section. It's currently set for me at 3/4. If I brought it all the way up, again, they would be that loud. Now, the next section is very important because it says change with buttons. Right now, the way for me to change the volume of ringtones and alerts is by going into this page. That means that the buttons on the side, the volume up button and the volume down button, do not have an impact on ringtones and alerts. They only have an impact on media that is playing through my device. I like it that way. Some people want to be able to change both their ringtone and alerts sounds and their media volume all at once. Some people like to have it separated. That's why Apple gave this option to let it not be changed by the buttons on the side. So that way you could, for example, turn up the volume on something you're trying to listen to without having then your ringtone being super loud at the same time. And maybe you want to have your ringtone and your text tones make sound, but just be very quiet so that it's not disturbing other people. If you then went to watch something on, an Instagram reel and you suddenly couldn't hear it and you turned it up, and then it's turning up your ringtone as well, that's where that's perplexing and annoying. So that's why that change with buttons option is there. That's what that means. Again, I have mine turned off. I don't ever really want to hear a ringtone or an alert in the first place, so I have no reason to have that set to change with the buttons. The next section is haptics. This is the built-in sort of vibrations that take place on your phone. So feeling those little blips and blops and brrr buzzes and twips and everything in between, that is what this is all about. So right now, the question is, when will haptics play on my device? Well, I want them to always play so that if I did have silent mode turned off, it would still, while playing a sound out loud, also vibrate my phone. You can set it so that it's only playing haptics in silent mode if you do toggle between the two. So that way, when you have silent mode turned off, meaning that you have full volume, then it is, or your notifications and your ringtones making sound, then what it'll do is it will play those out without vibrating. You can also say, don't play in silent mode, which means that if silent mode is turned on, not only do I not want you to make sounds for my incoming texts and calls, I also don't want you to vibrate my phone. I want you to do nothing. And then there's never play, which says, regardless of whether we're in silent mode or in some other, mode, do not disturb, whatever, just don't ever do a vibration, a haptic. I have mine set to always play. I love haptics. That's how I know that something has, happened on my phone that I need to check while always keeping silent mode turned on. This next section, we're not going to go through it. It's very easy to understand that these are your settings for your ringtone, your text tone, your voicemail, your mail, all of the kind of basic default alerts that are not specific to specific apps. So you can change what sounds are made from those different, for those different reasons. Next is keyboard feedback. Now this says that when I am tapping on my keyboard, I'm okay with sound playing and I want it to make little vibrations as I'm typing. I like to have the haptics. I technically don't want the sound unless I have silent mode turned off. And the rare occasion when I have silent mode turned off, I actually do like to hear the little sounds that play. That may not be for you. That's why you would turn off sound. But I definitely have those haptics turned on. The lock sound is currently turned on, which would say that if we were to lock the device and I had silent mode turned off, you would hear a little as it locks the phone and unlocks the phone from pressing the side button. And then system haptics, which basically says that there are different parts of your iOS experience that will make vibrations. And so do you want those to make those vibrations when those opportunities present themselves? Now, another aspect of this to understand is that the iPad does not have a haptic engine built into it. Arguably, that is because these devices are bigger, and therefore it would probably require more than one haptic engine to be able to properly make the necessary vibrations for you to feel them. Therefore, that's not the case in an iPad. So you wouldn't have those same haptics controls on the iPad that you do on the iPhone. Now, this next section is very important because it starts to talk about some of the settings that I have heard people complain about, that when they're listening to something and they turn it up, it's really not as loud as they were expecting. Chances are, at some point, you may have adjusted these settings. The first one says for the built-in speaker, what is the volume limit setting? This lets you, on your device, toggle on or toggle off a limit for the maximum volume able to come out of your iPhone speaker. Here's the cool thing. This limit does not affect phone calls, FaceTime calls, emergency calls and alerts, ringtones, alarms, system sounds, or Find My sounds. All of those will still play at the maximum volume without any impact. And that's for good reason. Those are the things that you want to be loud enough for you to hear them no matter what. But this does say songs, music, and other media, that's not going to blast through your speaker for the sake of, being able to hear it. So if we toggled this on, we can say that the max volume that is able to come out of the speaker is 60% of the technical capacity or capability of the speaker. It goes all the way up to 90% because obviously we want to have some limit if we're turning this on. So we don't set it to 100 because then there's no limit. So I'm going to toggle this off. I have that turned off because one thing that I like to do is if I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm, in the like brushing my teeth or something, that thing's going brrrr and, in my ears. So being able to hear the audiobook over that is nice. So there may be different tasks that you're doing where you do need it to be loud enough. That's why I have that turned off. But it can be a good thing to turn on if you find yourself, not necessarily paying attention to, or in many cases, this is kind of a guardian making this choice to protect the hearing of a child or, someone that they're taking care of. Are you ready to grow in 2026? Let me tell you why advertising on Twit is the way to make that happen. I'm Mikah Sargent. I'm the host of Tech News Weekly and several other shows on the network. And if you've ever listened to our shows, then you know what makes what we do different. It's trust. When we introduce a new partner on the show, the audience knows we believe in what they offer because we're only taking on partners that will actually benefit our audience. And they know that when I'm waxing ecstatic about your product or service, I'm doing so with authenticity. Some other reasons why you should join the network. It's all about the numbers. 88%. That's the number of listeners who've made a purchase based on a Twit ad. 90%. Those are the people who are involved in their company's tech and IT decisions. Oh, and by the way, 99% is the number of people who listen to most or all of the episode. Every host-read ad we offer is authentic, it's unique, it's embedded permanently, so that means that your brand is going to get exposure even after your campaign concludes, because yes, our nerds, our listeners, our viewers, they go back and check out the stuff we've done in the past. Every ad is simulcast across our social platforms. It's always available in both audio and video formats. So if you want your brand woven into conversations with tech experts and the world's most tech-savvy audience, where else are you going to turn except right here at Twit? So let's make 2026 your most substantial reach yet. Get in touch with us. Email partner@twit.tv or visit twit.tv/advertise. Now, the next section is another one that will have an impact. It's called Reduce Loud Sounds. What this does is it's a little bit of a smart feature in the sense that it is going to kind of process the media that is playing and determine when parts of that media would be louder than other parts of that media and kind of reduce the loudness of those parts. So, for example, if you were watching an action movie on your phone for some reason and you came to a crash scene or a bomb scene or whatever, some big, loud portion, it would look at the sound leading up to that scene and the sound after that scene and kind of normalize things to a lower volume. So it just helps to kind of make it so that the loudest parts are not incredibly loud and glaring and obnoxious, and that the quiet parts still get to be quiet, but also are able to be heard. Because that might be why you're turning up the volume, right? So that you can hear those quiet parts. But then a loud part comes around and suddenly you're going, oh my goodness, I need to turn it down. This prevents you from needing to do something like that. Then the final section, this is the place where I had to go because I had my AirPods in and I was turning them up all the way when I was in kind of a loud setting that was not consistent enough for the noise cancellation to work. And I was still having trouble hearing my AirPods. And I thought, I feel like these could get louder, but for some reason they're not. Well, that's because of a setting I had set in this section. So the headphone safety section has an option within it that says reduce loud audio. And you'll notice I still do have mine turned on, but I just turned it up a little bit more than it was. And by that, I sort of technically mean I turned it down. I turned down the effectiveness of it, but turned up the sort of upper limit. So when you have reduced loud audio turned on, what happens is it will listen to audio. It doesn't actually listen to, but it analyzes the audio in the same way as that kind of reduce loud sound section does. It analyzes the audio that's coming in and then will make sure that any sound that would go over a specific decibel level does not go over that decibel level. And you can set what you want to be the upper limit. So right now, my upper limit is 90 decibels. That's as loud as a motorcycle, but you can turn it down. I had it set to 80, I believe, before, and that's where I was having issues hearing what was actually going on. You can put it all the way down to as loud as a vacuum cleaner. There's as loud as a noisy restaurant at 80 decibels. 85 decibels is as loud as heavy city traffic. 90 is motorcycle. That's where I have mine now. 95 is as loud as a car horn, and 100 is an ambulance siren. So I have mine set to motorcycle. I don't need it to be any more than that, for sure. And technically, it would be better if it was at 85, but I did find that there were times where the upper limit was not high enough for me, and so I did want to make that change for the sake of my experience using it. So if you find that at one point you feel like your AirPods could be louder, but suddenly they're not as loud, this is the place where you want to go to make this change. You'll notice that beneath, or rather above this, is another section that says headphone notifications. This is a little notification that can come through that will, again, analyze when you're listening to audio, and if it is regularly above the recommended decibel level for causing harm to your ears, or rather for protecting your hearing, if it's above that section, meaning that it could cause harm over a 7-day period. So it's basically over the course of 7 days, you don't want to have audio playing in your ears that's above a certain decibel level. That is where we humans have an understanding that it starts to impact your hearing over time. So as long as you remain under that limit over the course of 7 days, you won't get a notification saying, hey, you probably need to turn down your headphones. And in this case, you can see that over the last 6 months, I've had no notifications because I regularly have that limited to the decibel level that is suggested for my area. Now, the final section here is USB audio accessories. This is for devices that you plug into your phone that are headphones. So if you have a pair of, in newer phones, USB-C headphones, or if you have an older pair of headphones that you plug in by way of the USB-C to a headphone jack adapter, then, those headphones will show up in this section and will then give you the ability to make adjustments to the devices that are plugged in and kind of keep track of those. So by default, this is going to work with your Apple branded or Beats branded devices, but you can then add to it. So right now, because I am showing you on screen my iPhone, this is technically a USB audio accessory. It is taking the audio from my phone and piping it into the recording if I wanted it to. So you'll notice that it says current USB audio accessory. Headphone audio levels from the connected device will not be saved to health because I don't have that turned on. But if I turned this on, then it would add that as a setting and keep track of that, and then let me know over the course of the next 6 months or rather over the course of the next week, if I start to listen to audio above that recommended decibel level. So that is what you would do there. For privacy's sake, if at any point you want to kind of have it no longer keep track of your USB audio accessories, you can tap that forget all USB audio accessories setting, which will turn it off, or which will remove all of those accessories that you've added. So that is, dear friends, a look at the sounds and haptics settings on your iOS, iPadOS devices. Again, I think the important aspect of this, the important point of this is that there are more settings than just setting your ringtone or turning off vibrations. And if you haven't seen those or didn't know that those features were available, this is your opportunity to go, oh, that's maybe where I need to go to fix this problem that I've been having. So be sure to check that out. And of course, as I mentioned, I'm going to be kind of trying to cover some of the issues that people are regularly talking about as far as I hear them, anecdotally and reading online. So if you have special concern, if you have issues that you've experienced that you'd like for me to cover, that regularly come up, these frustrations, whatever they happen to be, let me know. Mikah at twit.tv is how you get in touch, and I will be sure to cover that on a future episode of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks, as next week is Thanksgiving. So we will not be publishing an episode of the show next Thursday. So we'll see you again on December 4th. Bye-bye.